Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and today I am proud to be joined by a man who's bitten off more ears than Mike Tyson. His name is Mike Roth.
Yes. Have you been to Sun Prairie Corn Fest?
I have.
That's where I got my record.
I see what you did there. Nice turn of phrase, sir. So this week we have a few movies to discuss. So we're going to go ahead and focus our attention on what's on the marquee this week. The first movie that we have for you is Woman in Gold, starring Helen Mirren and Ryan Reynolds, directed by Simon Curtis. This movie is based on a true story about a lady who's on a mission to recover her family's stolen artwork, a masterpiece that her family. It was her aunt that was in the titular Woman in Gold during the Nazi raids. It was stolen, as happened to a lot of art in Europe, and currently resides in Austria since the takedown of the Nazi regime. Helen Mirren's character hires Ryan Reynolds, a kind of fresh-faced law student lawyer, and he's a friend of the family, and she kind of entices him to help her take on this case. We're going after the picture. We're going after the Austrian government. We're getting this artwork back, and it's pretty interesting. It's a combination that I wouldn't expect. Helen Mirren and Ryan Reynolds,
No.
kind of known for two opposite ends of the acting spectrum, more or less. Mm-hmm. And for me, I thought Helen Mirren was pretty great in her. She kind of drove every scene.
No, I really thought she was a great actor. And I really do like Ryan Reynolds, but I don't think, I don't know if it was because of him or because of the direction, but I don't think his character really hit home the emotional trauma he was supposed to get in order to really want to finish this case. At first, it just seemed like something he was reluctantly doing or something he was kind of doing because he was a good guy. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, it became his driving force. And I don't think Ryan Reynolds did a good job at really hitting that home. I like him as an actor, but he was really outshined by Helen Mirren.
Well, most people are. I mean, Helen Mirren is one of the great actresses that we have, and
yeah.
She was great. She had the emotion in the film. It was because of her. It was because of her passion that you even cared about this story. You know, and she really conveyed the passion of her character of, this is something that has to be done before I die. We have to get this back in the family. And I really enjoyed, like, when he said, okay, all we have to do is, we just have to fly over there, we're going to sign some papers, blah, blah. She's like, I'm not going over there.
Yeah.
No, not again. You know, it's just really, really good. And the rest of the cast was fine. Yeah. But really, it was these two that drove the entire movie.
Yeah.
I think it could have been much better if Ryan Reynolds would have been replaced by an actor of the caliber of Helen Mirren, someone who could hold up with her in the scenes and like you say, portray that emotion.
Or at least the script written to Ryan Reynolds' actual personality, who's in most of his movies, he's a pretty funny guy. And
right.
He's
But do you see Ryan Reynolds like guy who can portray a range of emotions in most movies?
No. He's the funny guy or the romantic guy. I know I joke, but in a way I'm not. I was kind of hoping Ryan Reynolds and Helen would become a couple.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah.
I
mean, he does a couple movies. That's what he does.
The Woman in Gold. What do you have to say? What do you give it?
I give it a 3. I thought it was a good movie. I didn't think it was spectacular, but definitely, if this is something you are interested in, give it a shot.
Yeah, I agree. I gave it 3 stars as well. I thought, you know, I mean, this is a movie that it's following Furious 7. It is a wholly different movie, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, talk about changing gears, but I thought it was told fairly well. Nothing spectacular, but not disappointing. Yeah. You know, take your mom to it. You'll have a good time. So, sir, you have a movie that unfortunately I was unable to get to due to time constraints.
You were busy.
So why don't you go ahead and take this great film over?
I went to see The Longest Ride. This is kind of 2 romances built in one. You have Alan Alda romance of him being in World War II, and he ended up getting this big fever that ended up making him sterile. It still was a romantic interest, and the wife wanted to have kids. And,
That sounds really romantic.
okay, well, that story was actually really bad, but it's half of the movie. And the other half is the main one, which is you have this woman in college who wants to be an art major and sell art and critique art, and she kind of falls in love with a guy who loves the rodeo, and neither one of them kind of understands each other's world. And a theme that keeps on running through this is love means sacrifice. This is over 2 hours long, and no one really sacrifices really anything for love. I'm not going to tell you the end, but it's pretty much one of the dumbest endings I've ever seen in a romance.
So there's a twist
in
ending.
years. It leaves you perplexed.
She was a ghost the entire time.
No, it's definitely nothing creative. It was pretty much, the movie went very safe, and because it's a movie that's supposed to be about sacrifice and love, if there's no sacrifice,
then the story falls apart.
Well, yeah, and then they paste it all together in the end with a kind of very improbable ending.
I love
that
those.
rewards them for not doing what love interests are
So what
supposed
you're
to
saying
do.
is, so far, this sounds great to me.
Yeah, this is not one of the better movies, but then again, this is not a movie for me. They did not make this for
You
me
are not
at all.
the audience for a Nicholas Sparks novel turned
No,
into
and
film.
this is his 10th book turned into a movie. So definitely there are people out there that love this kind of stuff.
My wife's
but
favorite movie of all time is the Nicholas Sparks novel, A Walk to Remember.
that is interesting. I'm glad I don't have to watch that with you.
Yeah, you might.
But yeah, it's basically made, it's not a romance comedy, it is a romance. It's a romance made mostly for teen girls. And
rodeo clowns?
And on the top of that, it's also for the urban cowboy, which I am also not an urban cowboy either. Yeah, it's weird. I got the sparkly buttons, but that's about it.
So what would you give The Longest Ride?
I actually gave it pretty high, I thought, for myself.
Okay.
I gave it a 1.5. It's not a good movie by any means, but for being over 2 hours, I guess the bonus is it felt like only an hour and 50 minutes.
Brother, you took one for the team this week.
Sorry.
Oh, man. Wow. So, The Longest Ride, there you go. Not recommended for a certain genre. If you fit into the genre that Mike talked about, maybe you'll love it.
No.
Probably not.
No, probably not. You'd
I
really have
can't
to be
believe that movie was 2+.
You'd have to be a really diehard Nicholas
That's a long movie for
Sparks.
that.
Yeah.
Wow. So the reason I was unable to attend this phenomenal movie was this past week was here. It was the Wisconsin Film Fest. If you know anything, if you have a film fest in your town, you know these can be a big deal. Here in Madison, we have the Wisconsin Film Fest. This year, stretched over 8 days, we had 161 films shown at the fest from over a dozen different countries, 18, 20 different countries represented. Documentaries, new films, films that have yet to be released, old films, amazing stuff. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of movies that I would recommend. Of all the movies that I saw there, one of them that will be coming out later this summer, a little tip ahead. So,
And if anybody is on our Facebook page, you know that I did go to one of them.
yes,
also.
Mike and I went to one, and I have to say that might have been one of the worst of the whole fest, which is saying something because it wasn't terrible.
It was interesting, and we're not going to talk about
No.
that one, but you know.
But the ones I want to talk about real quick are two different ones. The first one is a documentary called Almost There. Almost There is a documentary directed by Dan Ribicki and Aaron Wickenden about a man that they discovered. They were at a pierogi fest down in East Chicago, Indiana, and they stumbled across this guy who was doing drawings, making artwork. His name's Peter Anton. He's this older fella right here you see. And they kind of got to talking with him. Yeah, interesting cat. He's got some stories. And they followed him back to his place. He wanted to show him some more of his artwork. And he had these journals that he'd been working on. You see right here.
Oh, look at that.
That he'd been working on his entire life, telling his entire story for his whole life. And he felt like, oh man, it has to be told. Well, they show up. You find out that he is living in a condemned house. The house that he grew up in 50, 60 years ago He lives in the basement. He's a hoarder, as you see.
Yeah.
But he is just, all he cares about is making more art. And making pretty great, amazing, what they call outsider art. So Dan and Aaron kind of take him in, just kind of discover that he's a really incredible guy with an incredible story to tell. They initially tried to make a book out of all the things that he has. They are unable to do that, so they decide to go to Intuit here and set up a gallery for outsider art. And he gets all of his artwork and these paintings and these journals put in there. What was really interesting is he's so in love with these. The artwork that he creates is his family. That's all he has in his life. So that when they borrowed his artwork to put it on display, he missed it so much for those 2 weeks. He actually repainted all of it to have it with him. I mean, he's an interesting guy, and the documentary is told very well. The documentarians do an amazing job of showing him as a complete person, his history as a young man growing up, teaching, the passion that's in him, and how life kind of sometimes gets away from you. There's a parallel story between one of the director's family and Peter. And you see that Peter, he kind of uses them to help him, and they use him for the story. It's a really, really interesting movie. It just came out this year. It is making the film fest circuit currently. I talked to the directors a couple of times at the fest, and they're traveling all around the world with this film, taking it. So hopefully distribution takes it out and gets it out where you can find it on Netflix or anywhere else. But just something to keep your eye on if you see or hear of the documentary Almost There coming anywhere where you can see it. I highly, highly recommend checking out. It is a really, really good time.
It looked pretty interesting, just in the little clip that I saw right there.
Yeah, it really is. And I was lucky enough to see them do 2 different Q&As. The movie showed twice this week, and I sat in for both Q&As as well. Really interesting stories.
Tell you
really
what,
great.
I know you didn't like the movie that both of us saw, but
Yes.
I like those Q&As.
The Q&As are fabulous. That's one of the best things about going to a film fest is you can see the movies, you can find the movies wherever, but these Q&As you discover so much more about the movie. A couple years ago, you and I went to go see the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That was cool.
The adaptation.
Yep.
And then the Q&A afterwards was incredible. It was as entertaining as the movie, right?
Yeah.
And so that's another one that if you can find that's incredible stuff. The second movie, though, that I have is a movie that is coming out. It will be released June 12th of this summer, and it is called Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. This is one that we got at our film fest kind of ahead of time. It was pretty great. The Fox Searchlight folks were there fielding questions afterwards about what you thought of the movie, things like that. But this is a film... Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. The me in the movie is Greg, played by actor Thomas Mann. Earl is played by R.J. Seiler, and the Dying Girl is Rachel, played by Olivia Cooke, who I really enjoy. Olivia Cooke is great, right?
I do, yeah.
And the cast is kind of filled out. The adults in this picture, you have Nick Offerman from Parks and Rec, Connie Britton, they both play Greg's parents. You have Molly Shannon, who plays Rachel's mom, and John Barenthal, who plays kind of the cool teacher in school. And basically the movie is Greg he's this guy, this kid in high school who's just an outsider, doesn't want to be a part of any group, wants to be a ghost through school, kind of hates his time in school, doesn't have friends other than Earl. He and Earl make movies together, really, really terrible adaptations of famous movies. And Rachel is a girl in school who discovers she has leukemia. She and Greg are not friends. He is sent over there by his mom to kind of help her out. Just go be a friend, be a smiley face. And the movie it's not like a linear story about and then they fall in love and this and that. It's a really interesting tale of high school, of dealing with real life problems, real life emotions, real life relationships between friends, between what people expect you to do and what you really want to be. And it's really an incredible movie that specifically starring these 3 young actors is driven by them and the emotion that, especially Olivia Cooke.
Olivia Cooke
incredible.
looks younger. This must have been taking place a couple
I'm not sure
ago.
when it was shot, but I just know that as the girl who is dying from cancer, her transition through the movie is just it's heartbreaking, but it's amazing to watch. And kind of how she and Greg and Earl, the three of them, kind of manage their emotions and their relationships with each other. I was completely blown away. And so I mean, to give it a score, I gave it 5 stars. This was the best movie I've seen this year. I was absolutely blown away. And now I know that when you go to Film Fest, I've learned this, that a lot of times when you see these movies, you give them a little higher score because I discovered a gem, you know, and it's natural. But
it's
this
more personal. It really is.
Right. And this film, though, in its essence, felt like a great John Hughes movie. That's what I walked away with when I got done. When it ended, I'm like, I felt like I did the first time I saw some of the great John Hughes teenage dramas with comedy elements. I mean, that's how it felt like they recaptured it. The director, Alfonso Gomez-Reyon, I don't know a lot about him, but he did an amazing job. And I highly recommend, when this comes out in June, hopefully it comes out nationwide in theaters, I would highly recommend everyone seeing it.
You're telling me if you could relive last week, you would not see The Longest Ride over this?
No, I am very happy to have seen me and Earl and the Dying Girl. It was great. I mean, I like to hold my scores for a little while and let it resonate, make sure but it was a 5-star movie that I highly recommend to anyone when it comes around to you or when it comes into the theaters. Go check it out for sure. And if you have a film fest coming to your area, go check it out. I mean, like I said, ours has hundreds of movies in it, and we are blessed to have one of the bigger ones in the area. 17th annual this year, really great. But there are film fests of all sizes and scopes all around the world. Find one, check it out. It's a great time to see movies that you wouldn't see in first-run theaters, you know. So, having said all that, let's take a look backwards.
We're going to do our throwback?
Yeah, why not? Why don't you explain this throwback, sir?
This throwback is tied into The Longest Ride. One of the themes in Longest Ride is the cowboy. He suffered a lot of head injuries, and he needs to quit. But he keeps on going, which really kind of shout out to me the entire Rocky series. Every single Rocky movie.
You're going to die, Rock.
He needed to die. He needed to stop boxing in every movie, but he kept on going, even well into what? With Rocky Balboa. He was supposed to be, what, 60, 50, something like that?
He was way too old.
Way too old. And in the original, I found out through watching all the extras, he was supposed to win that. Yeah. But that didn't really pass their...
And it made it better that he didn't. That's what made it incredible.
Yeah.
That's what won it Oscars.
When I saw the original ending, I was like, no way, they weren't ever going to go with that.
Yeah, it's... the Rocky series, I mean, that is a series of ups and downs of storytelling and successful and not successful techniques.
Oh, yeah. He had a lot of success. Well, of course, the first one is a classic.
Right.
And then it started dropping. And then Rocky actually has a character. His character has changed a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And the third one, he became kind of a smart guy, which was what the first two Rockies...
That's because that's what Stallone wanted to be. That's when he was the smart guy in Tango and Cash.
And then he became...
He's like, yo, I'm a smart guy. I'm not a dummy.
And then he became the dumb guy again, but only after serious brain injury.
Right, after that.
Which is 5, which is one of the worst ones.
You knock him down. Why don't you try knocking me down now? I mean, Rock is just... The entire series, look, love it or hate it, ridiculous or great. I mean, for me, I have a great history where this movie, the first Rocky, is legitimately a great film, right?
Excellent
film. The story, the quiet moments between he and Adrian make this series, make this movie incredible. And it gets ridiculous with 3 and 4. And 4 is great. 4 is the 80s. USA versus Russia.
4 is not great.
Oh, it is.
4 is so terrible. The robot helper. I mean,
happy birthday, Polly. 4 is the one I've seen the most because that was in the sweet spot of I watched that movie so many times. I mean, Dolph Lundgren, Ivan Drago. I quote that movie probably daily.
I'm sorry.
Judge me if you will.
You should not. I did. I
must break you. But the series as a whole, I mean, 5 might be one of the worst movies ever made. Rocky 5 with Tommy Gunn, that might be one of the worst movies ever.
But The street fight.
Rocky never even gets in the ring?
No, he didn't. But there was a street fight.
Oh my gosh,
They jumped onto the bandwagon of what was popular with the last
pin our
movie.
hopes. We will pin this movie onto the back of a guy who has never acted before, and he's gonna carry us. And a caricature of Don King. Oh, it was just.
Oh, and they had that CNC Music Factory ripoff song that was absolutely terrible.
But Rocky Balboa, I thought Rocky Balboa was pretty great. Coming off of 5, and the letdown that 5 was, and then all these years later, like, I'm gonna make another Rocky movie, and everyone goes, no, why, no? And I thought it was a good capper to the franchise. It did. It kind of went back to the original. It got to the quiet moments between he and the girl in the movie. And I thought that was really nice that it wasn't all flash and craziness. There was substance to it again.
Yeah.
Rocky was back to his roots again. And now here we find out that there's another one. It'll be coming out later this year. We have Creed.
Yep, Creed coming out in November.
Spoiler alert, 30 years later, whatever, Apollo Creed died. Dang, Russian got him.
Yeah.
But Rocky is going to train Creed's son. He is going to take over the role of Mickey. We have, I believe it's Michael B. Jordan will be taking the role of young Creed. And he's going to step back into the ring, and we're going to reunite the franchise again. It never ends.
It will end.
You think so?
Eventually it will.
You know, these days, even if actors die, we can still make movies with them. That's just a warning.
That is creepy and correct.
That's just a warning. And Stallone is more plastic than flesh, I think.
Yeah.
But I think he has whatever HGH The Rock isn't taking, Stallone has. I think that will keep him alive forever.
And that's what I didn't like about the last Rocky movie. I mean, it was a lot better written than the 3 movies before that, but he is way past his prime. Not a little bit past his prime.
I mean, it's not believable. It's not believable in the least bit. And I mean, the fights never were believable. Nobody fights like that, but that's what made them so fun.
And you're correct. That's what it's the choreography and stuff like that. I remember watching Rocky and going, "Wow, why don't I watch boxing more often?" And then I watch boxing. I'm like, Rocky was.
Why isn't every fight like him and Clubber Lang?
It should be.
No defense, hands down, just haymakers all day.
Yeah, and he also decided Sylvester Stallone decided to kind of reduce that a little bit in his last movie. Also, he wanted to be more realistic, but what was awesome about it was kind of the fakeness of it.
Well, the thing with the last one, real quick, was that he got a real fighter to play opposite him who he didn't ask too much of. Unlike in 5, when he put the story on the back of a guy who was a fighter and not an actor, this time he was just a bad guy who just had to spout his mouth and be him.
Yeah.
And this was the first time that they went away from the filming technique that they used originally, and they actually shot live. This was when Stallone was making his boxing reality show with Oscar de la Hoya. And so this was actually filmed at MGM in front of a real fight. They're like, and we're going to do the shooting. So they have a real hot crowd in a real house, real ring, the whole 9, and they're using the fight cameras. So it looks like HBO boxing.
Yeah.
Because they're using those cameras and all that. So it did look good, and the emotion that he had was somewhat real. And they couldn't make it look too hokey because you are in front of a fight crowd and not a stand-in crowd of,
But I'm sure every single one of the members of the audience has heard of Rocky, watched it, and probably would have been, for anything, because this is Rocky Balboa. Come on.
Yeah, you get to watch a 68-year-old guy get out there and start throwing haymakers at a 25-year-old guy. And I hope he wins.
And in the original, he did win. And that I'm glad they changed it. I really am.
Yeah, there was also the, is Rocky going to die at the end? That was always one of the things. We know that's not going to happen because we got another movie coming. But
yeah.
I love the Rocky franchise. Let's talk 10 more minutes about Rocky.
No, no, that's all right.
No.
I enjoyed them. I don't think I'd ever, watch them again unless we do this throwback.
Mike, I watch the Rocky movies. If you have USA Network, I believe you can watch it constantly.
Constantly, yeah.
I believe it's always on. If that's not on, Shawshank's on. But I watch them, I want to say every couple of years, I'll just go through a marathon, just run through them all.
I'll watch the first one, but I'll never watch Tommy Gunn ever again.
No. There's no need because that's a terrible movie.
That is terrible.
3 and 4, for as ridiculous as they are so 80s, and they just remind me of childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, between Mr. T and Hulk Hogan in 3, I mean, that's just everything that was 1985.
Well, Rocky did use breakdancing to beat Tommy Gunn. That's 80s.
I could sit here. We could just quote Rocky movies all day. I'm fine with that. That's what we want to do. What makes Rocky movies great? Training montages. Let's just say that right here.
Yep.
The greatest training montages ever. Even in the new one, when he's old and Duke is like, "Oh man, you can't run, can't do road work because your knees are shot. We're gonna have to just start blunt force trauma." And here we go. Music in the background, gonna fly now. Just start punching. Oh, I love.
I think for the training, I like the Russian one the best.
That's the best one, right?
Yeah.
Because it's two. You get Drago injecting, doing the machine, and then Rocky just running up the mountain.
Yep.
Drago! Oh man,
taking the yokes and pushing them in the snow.
How many times did I shadow box in the living room watching this movie? Every time. That's what it was.
We had a guy at my place of employment that used to run out into the fields and shadow box, but he was crazy and he was forced into early retirement.
Let's be careful how we use crazy because I know somebody else has done that before. All right, so moving on. Let's
that's
talk,
the point I was making.
Let's talk about. Wait a minute. We work together. It's all right. Let's look ahead to the week of April 24th. That weekend, we have a couple of movies coming out that we will be discussing. First one we have is The Age of Adeline. Mike, how excited are you for The Age of Adeline?
Am I going to be the only one watching this one?
It's a time travel movie starring Harrison Ford.
Oh, no.
Right?
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Except for, it's bearing the lead. Blake Lively is, she has an accident, right? Hits her head.
Yeah. Magic accident.
And she suddenly becomes a vampire, I guess. Never ages.
Yep.
She becomes the vampire Lestat. Somebody out there's going, wait, I'm going to see this movie. This is crazy.
No.
She never ages. She goes on and on through time, never aging. And so she has to deal with, you find love and they age, they die, you don't.
Yeah.
Your parents, they go on and die, you don't. And your daughter passes you in age. It looks kind of interesting. It's an interesting story.
It sounds more interesting than I think the trailers make it look.
The trailers are not cut well. I hope it's a better movie than what it's presented as. We'll see. The next movie we have that weekend is Little Boy. Little Boy.
Which is supposedly, according to every trailer I've seen, came out in February.
Okay. Well, it's not. Little Boy, starring Michael Rappaport and a young man.
Yeah.
And and Paul Blart himself is in this movie as well, Kevin James. And about a young boy who may or may not have magical powers. Maybe he can move mountains.
Yeah.
We'll never know. Or will we?
I
guess we'll see the movie, so maybe we will know. But those are the two movies coming out that weekend. Next week, we will be discussing a whole host of movies. We've got While We Were Young. We've got Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
Yep.
Unfriended.
Monkey Kingdom.
Well, a whole bunch of films. That is next weekend. But before we go, of course, as always, we would like to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters. Thank you, Marcus Theaters. We really appreciate you and everything you do for us, bringing us into your magical theaters and showing us the pictures on the moving box. And I really appreciate Marcus Theaters.
I do agree. I really appreciate Marcus Theaters.
They are the best.
They are.
So if you would like to find more of us, you can find us by following us on Twitter at Real Reviews TV. You can find us on Facebook at Real Reviews TV as well. Find us there, like us, friend us, chat with us, do whatever. If you want to see more of our shows, find us on ksun.tv or go to YouTube and search Real Reviews KSUN. You will find us there. Everything's set.
Yeah.
So until next week, my name is Jamison.
I'm Mike Roth.
Thanks for watching.